How to access the Emergency Response Data Platform. Any public safety agency can access life-saving emergency data through the RapidSOS Emergency Response Data Platform. There are two ways of doing so. RapidSOS Portal is a powerful web-based tool that enables you to manage emergencies and access location and supplemental data for every call in your jurisdiction. Signing up for RapidSOS Portal is easy and only takes a few minutes. In addition to emergency management tools and data, RapidSOS Portal includes a training platform as well as administrative tools to manage user permissions, track usage, and analyze trends in your agency. To learn more and sign up for RapidSOS Portal, please visit rapidsosportal.com. RapidSOS also integrates with every major CAD, CPE, mapping, or other public safety softwares. With an integration, you can receive RapidSOS data through your existing workflow, and you won't need any additional screens, tabs, or windows. To learn more about integrations, visit rapidsos.com/public-safety-partners.
We will go ahead and get started. So just to explain what happened last week. So last week I had recorded the radio section on a busted screen laptop. I was connected to a larger monitor, and so I was able to do everything that I normally did. But for some reason, when I went back to download the video and upload everything like I normally had done, because my new computer wasn't ready to move everything over yet. So I wasn't ready to do it on there. I could not get my broken computer to display on the bigger monitor. And so I've been trying to figure that out, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to get it re-recorded this week. So we are going to re-record the radio section this coming week, and that will go up once I re-record it. I'm not going to do the radio section as another live section because I don't want you to have to come on and have to hear me do that again if you already saw it. So everything for the radio section will be posted as soon as I get that re-recorded. So this week will officially be week 5, because what I don't want to have to do is upload them and have that delayed in the order in which they were done on the YouTube channel. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. So thank you for your patience there. It's just always a thing. It's just always a thing. So we wrapped up Telecommunicator Week celebration last week. Thank you for everybody who participated. I hope you had as much fun as I did. It was so much fun. We gave almost 200 prizes away, and my office is full of stuff to ship out. So if you want a prize, you should have received an email that is waiting for a confirmation on your mailing address. So please check your inboxes for that. And let's get started officially. So welcome to the 2024 ENP study group. This is week 5, multi-line telephone systems, MLTS. And if you've heard me speak at all on this topic, you know that it is a huge passion of mine for several reasons. But we'll cover everything that we need to cover as far as the ENP exam goes. And I will point you in the direction to learn a little bit more about it if you should want to learn more about it at a later time. So if you are stumbling upon this video on my YouTube channel and you have not yet joined the live study group, this live study group is going until June 21st, 2024. It is set for the summer and fall ENP exams, and maybe even the early 2024 exams. Just keep that in mind. And from there, we'll decide when we're going to do the next live study group. I may be putting a pause on the live study groups for a little bit. I'll make that determination over the next few weeks. But if you are finding this before June 21st and you want access to the live study group, which gives you access to the Google group where all of the recorded materials, the PDFs of each session, as well as MP3s and any additional materials such as the practice exams and some just study guide stuff that I've created is accessible. You can go to the onscenefirst.com/training/study ENP, and we will go ahead and get that, get you added to that. If you're watching this after June 21st, you can go to that same website and you'll be able to get added to the study group, the previous study group, to be able to access those materials. So, to be notified when the next live study group goes, go ahead and register for our newsletter at the onscenefirst.com website. Right on the first page, you can just sign up for the newsletter. Even if you are in the study group, you plan on taking the exam, go ahead and sign up for the newsletter. We do all kinds of cool stuff and send out valuable information periodically. So check that out if you would. I want to say thank you to my premier study group sponsor, Rapid SOS. They have been paramount in allowing this study group to be what it is, and I am forever grateful for their support. And as far as the scholarships go, today is the last day to submit for the scholarship. So thank you to our sponsors, Rapid SOS, Responder Services Consulting, and LB Comms. Because of their generosity, we are able to give away 5 scholarships for the ENP exam, for the summer ENP exam. And that means they have to be in by the end of the day today. So unfortunately, there are no exceptions. So it needs to be in by midnight Eastern Standard Time. And that way we can get them evaluated and the folks chosen. Also, just let the person know that you listed as the decision-making designee, that they will be receiving an email from myself just to verify some of the information that was added, and we will be awarding that scholarship on May 10th with plenty of time to register for the summer exam. For everyone else that is not, just keep an eye on that date because it's going to come up quick as far as registering. So head on over to onscenefirst.com/scholarship if you want to submit for that scholarship. So there you go. There are several other scholarships available. I know that Texas Nina has one available. Tina, the Tennessee Nina folks, 911 Wonder Woman. And if you go to the Nina Facebook page, I recently saw that they are also giving away scholarships. I don't know what their criteria is. I know our criteria is based on the fact that you would have to pay for the exam yourself, that your agency would not cover it. I don't know if that's a criteria for the Nina and Motorola scholarships, but the date those need to be submitted by is April 30th. So there you go. Now let's get into the multi-line telephone system stuff. So as far as our manual goes, they use the term right in the beginning of this section. They refer to MLTS, and that's what I'm going to call it because multi-line telephone systems is, a mouthful at times. But they're formally known as a PBX, which stands for Private Branch Exchange. I have another slide later on that is specifically to the acronym PBX, but it can also be public branch exchange. So there's a little bit of a difference between public and private. And I know that that's like, duh, no brainer. One's public and one's private, but there are different features between the two. And I will point those out a little bit later. I know that if you were in last year's study group, there were 2 slides that I had, which I have rectified, where it did identify one of the slides as saying public. So on this slide, it said private, but then on another slide, it said public. But I never explained that PBX can actually stand for both public and private. So I figured I'd just throw that out there now for anyone that may have seen that or remembered that from last year. What we know about MLTS systems is they are known to create location challenges. And while they are great in theory, we end up having location challenges with them. And in some of the situations, there were issues that we had with them that were issues that we didn't know until we knew. And there were errors that were made that I consider to be errors of ignorance, not intention. They didn't know what they didn't know. And we'll talk about those. They may be a central system that provides a service to remote locations that are geographically separated. So we're going to identify the different types of multi-line phone systems, but just know generally that you can have a multi-line phone system that is geographically separated by thousands of miles, and they're all part of the same phone system. So can that wreak havoc? Yes, it sure can. And some of the trunk lines may be located on site, they may be in a remote location, or they may be located in the cloud. So very different in many situations. And let's learn about them. So, Derek, one reason I understand Nina uses MLTS is it includes both PBX branch, key systems, and centric systems. Yeah. So the term PBX does encompass a lot of the different terminologies. And we'll get into more of that in just a second, in a few minutes. So thank you. The different types of MLTSs. There are single buildings at a single location. So this could be like an office building, maybe even your police department. It could be, say, a hospital facility, a high school, an elementary school. But then you can also have multiple buildings at a single location. So as far as our high school and our junior high, they're two separate buildings, but they're on the same property and they're on the same phone system, but they're two different. They're two different phone numbers that can reach the same, but they can interchange and they can talk to each other, just kind of through extensions, etc. College campuses, hospital properties where you have multiple buildings on the same property. And then you have multiple buildings at different locations. I can't remember if it was the Dollar Tree, Dollar General, one of them. There was an agency that I was teaching a 911 class and we were talking about this. And whichever agency, wherever I was, that agency had, or one of the agencies there, they had the main location for the dollar, whatever, the Dollar General, the dollar store, whichever one it was. They had the main facility, the parent location. So anytime a 911 call was placed from anywhere in the country from one of those locations, it went to them. And then they had to figure out where they were, and that call needed to get changed. But we know that there are new laws in place that is preventing, or it should be preventing that. And we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. So single building at a single location, multiple buildings at a single location, and multiple buildings at different locations. And then in your manual, there is an abbreviation, ECS. And the reason why I have a little star there is because it is not identified in your manual as to what it is what it stands for. And what it stands for is Enterprise Communication Systems. So if you talk to anyone like Mark Fletcher or anyone that is familiar or does a lot of work with multi-line telephone systems, you will hear them refer to an MLTS system as an enterprise. And I never quite understood that. He would always, whenever I would have conversations with him, he would say, an enterprise, an enterprise, an enterprise. And it wasn't until I had to figure out what this abbreviation was that I realized the reason why he was calling it an enterprise is because that's what it's actually. An MLTS is, as a whole, is called an enterprise communication system, right? So ECS. So let's break these down. So some telephone locations will not have a unique telephone number assigned to them. So they'll have one main phone number that is the number that you call into, and then you have the recording, the phone tree that will send you to somewhere else in that facility. Some telephone locations will have individual directories assigned. So in my police department, or most police departments, if you press 1, you get the chief. If you press 2, you get this person. If you press 3. But also on the same phone system, I was able to give people a direct phone number into our multi-line telephone system that would go directly into my office. The chief could do the same thing, as could the detectives. So there were some phone numbers that could be directly dialed into in that system, but not all of the extensions that could happen with. When they do have their own number, it is called direct inward dialing. So that's what that refers to. So direct inward dialing is when you do have the ability to have a phone number that is directly dialed into a multi-line telephone system. Because if you think about it, a multi-line telephone system, you have a phone number, and then all of the other phone numbers branch off of that phone number. And usually when a phone call is made, it may use that kind of outgoing number or a bank of phone numbers to go out, but you're only calling one number in. Okay. And direct inward dialing, DID, is a telephone service that allows a phone number to ring directly to the specific phone at the business instead of going through the menu or a queue and needing to dial that extension. And I do recall DID being on my exam. So that's why I kind of put a couple of ways to define that in there. Going back to the PBX thing, while PBX generally, well, the BX stands for branch exchange. It's going to be different for a private switch branch exchange and a public switch. So the private is a PBX, is a private telephone network used within the organization or enterprise. It's localized. It allows for internal communications between the user within the organization and also provides connections to the public telephone network system. So the public switch telephone network system, PSTN, for external calls. So it's providing, it's a private branch exchange that has kind of two functions. It allows you to go back and forth between extensions, but it also allows you to leave the building and go to the end office, wherever it needs to go to make that call get to its endpoint for external calls also. PBX systems typically include features such as call forwarding, voicemail, conference calling, and more. These systems are privately owned, operated, and maintained by organizations, and they serve the organization's internal communication needs. This PBX is the type of PBX that you see on your alley screen under class of service that says PBX. So we're still seeing some of these today. And even though it should technically say MLTS, they're still saying PBX. So it's a private, in that case, it's a private switch. Okay. You're not going to see an indication for a public switch or a public branch exchange. Public switches, sometimes referred to as central office or public branch exchanges, are part of the public switch telephone network also, but they're the piece that are handling the routing of the calls between the different subscribers, both within and between different service providers. So remember when we went back to a couple of weeks ago, when we would get to, say, the end office, where that call still has to keep going, but it needs to now change providers to get from one place to the next, because, say, my long distance carrier, etc., it has to switch networks. It has to work in tandem with another subscriber, another service provider. That's where a public switch is. So the private switch is only being used by the organization. The public switch is being used by anybody and everybody that's out there. So just keep that in mind if you see a question that is specifically being asked about a PBX. Public switches are operated by telecommunication carriers and accessible to the general public for making phone calls. Again, private versus public, right? And while both private and public switches are involved in telecommunications, the term PBX is more commonly associated with private switches, specifically referring to the private branch exchange systems within an organization. So like I said, the only time you're really going to see PBX is on your alley, and that's indicating a private switch. So hopefully that makes sense. So just to go a little bit further with the private switch, we're going to add on a piece to it. Our private switch alley, our private switch automatic location information. Now that's going to be within our system, okay? Within our closed private system. The PS alley is a database that is used to automatically identify and relay a caller's location information to emergency dispatchers when someone dials 911 or other emergency number. So that could be 112, 999, etc. in other areas. It sounds like, by description, the same as an MSAG, the Master Street Address Guide, but I just want to differentiate the differences. We're going to learn more about the MSAG when we talk about databases specifically. But just to get a little bit clearer, in the PS alley, this database contains that information about the phone number and their associated locations. So when you dial the emergency number, the PS alley database is queried to retrieve the address linked to the phone number. It helps emergency services identify where it's at. By definition, that's exactly what an MSAG is also doing. The MSAG, the Master Street Address Guide, is a database that cross-references street addresses with a standardized format. It ensures that the addresses associated with the phone number in the PS alley is accurate and correctly linked to the emergency service zone. So the PS alley that's coming from the organization is cross-referenced with a more public MSAG to make sure that the information is correct and it is going to the place that it's supposed to be going to. So PS alley contains phone number and location data, while MSAG ensures the accuracy and validation of the addresses that the PS alley is bringing back. So hopefully it makes sense. And again, just to break it all down, any number used for emergency service routing must be entered into a PS alley, public switch automatic location information database, and then associated with the proper MSAG validation street address of the actual station. This is the responsibility of the phone service provider. That means that when we get into it, we've already had a conversation about discrepancy reporting, and I'm going to kind of reiterate that in just a little bit. But That is why discrepancy reporting is so important. If the call comes to you from a multi-line phone system that was not supposed to go to you, that is why a discrepancy report needs to be filled out, because the provider of the phone service, the maintainer of the phone, needs to be made aware that something is not jiving, it's not matching up, and it's not going where it's supposed to go. So there you go. So there are times when an MLTS is using a main phone number, and this is simple. This is just like a regular phone, using one phone number to make a 911 call, and I'm going to show you that graphic in just a second. So when an MLTS uses the main phone number as an Annie when contacting multi-line emergency services, it's the simple call flow that we've seen many times, and we're going to see many more times in our time together over the next several weeks. The main phone number of the MLTS is provisioned in the database management system for ALI. Just like any business or residential line, it basically says this phone number is attached to this address, and that's it. It doesn't give any more information as to it's on the, if this is the cafeteria building, this is the library building, this is the fourth building on the right, this is the fifth floor. It's not giving additional information. It's just saying this phone number is attached to this address. When the phone number is sent off to get the alley, a query is made, and the location associated with that phone number is brought back from the alley database. This is where we're having issues, because only that simple location is coming back. That is why we have laws now. That is why we have Kari's law. That is why we have BAUM'S Act. That is why we have all of these provisions in place saying you have to identify the exact location of where this caller is coming from. So this is what this, and again, you want to start processing the call flow. This is going to be your first exposure through Tracy's call flow processing. And I'm going to show you this in a couple of different ways through a couple of different slides at a couple of different times, but we're going to just keep on building on top of it. So first, the enterprise communication system, the MLTS, the phone in the room makes the 911 call. That 911 call goes through the system and it hits the network tandem, the 911 tandem, and the call goes through the system and it ends up at the PSAP. That phone number is what is called parsed out. It's taken out. It is wrapped up in some data. We'll say it's questions saying, hey, let's go back to the alley database, and we're going to find out where this location is. So that Annie, the phone number, is parsed out of that information. It's wrapped up in a data question sent to the alley database, and the question is asked, where are you? And then the alley information, that address that's associated with the phone number, is now pulled back into the PSAP. Well, that's great if there's only one address. When it's not great is when there's more than one address. When I have a series of buildings on a campus, that's not great. We don't love this for MLTS. What we would prefer is if it had its PS alley, our private switch alley, but not everybody is doing that. And we want everybody to be doing that. So multi-line systems using PS alley looks a little bit different. So the owner of the system, and again, if you already notice, it's a requirement on somebody that owns the system to do a little bit of extra work. So what does that mean? This is why we have problems. We are relying on people to follow through. And if people don't understand the magnitude or the error of their ways, then They're not going to do what they need to do. If you have a good phone company, they're going to be on top of it. But the owner of the system creates and maintains alley records for each location. Those locations are called emergency response locations. So let me break that down for a second. Emergency response locations are the location within the location. An ERL refers to the physical location from which the 911 call originates. It's the address or geographical coordinates associated with the caller's location at the time of the emergency. It's not, we don't call that location, we don't call the location for a 911 caller an ERL. That's not a term that we generally hear in 911. You wouldn't say like, oh, what's their ERL? We more use the term ERL when we're referring to the location within the location. Meaning, if we have a campus, if it is a college, if it is a hospital campus, if there are several buildings, that's where the ERL comes into play. At this point, we also add an ELIN, an emergency location identification number. If you remember when we talked about ESNs, there are certain parts of the system that doesn't understand basic language. It understands numbers. And that's what we're dealing with here also. So an ELIN is a unique identifier assigned to each endpoint device, such as a telephone or VoIP device capable of placing a 911 call. ELINs are used to associate the caller's location information, ERL, with the call when it reaches the appropriate public safety answering point. So if I had a phone on my desk right here, and the phone number was 555-555-1234. And in the system, the address is identified as 123 Main Street. The system doesn't understand that this is Tracy's office. So what the ELIN is, it's going to give me a number. It's going to assign a number to this particular device. This device is going to be number 5203. So at the same time of that 911 call, both the phone number and the 5203 are going to be sent off as well. And I'm going to show you what that graphic looks like in just a second. Today, in most MLTS systems, a primary rate integrated service digital network, an ISDN, may be used. That's how most MLTS systems are being used, is through a digital network. We're going to break down an ISDN at another time. We're going to talk about them when we talk about the SS7, signal system 7 networks, as well as the ISDN networks. That's another day. We'll unpack that later. But basically, when we use MLTS using the private switch alley, we're going to go through the same call processing, except there's going to be something else that's happening simultaneously. So our call is going to happen. 911 call gets placed, goes to the tandem as it normally would, gets the call to the PSAP that it's supposed to go to. The phone number gets parsed out, sent to the alley database, and the alley is going to get pulled back. Without the PS alley, all we're getting is the main location. But what happens simultaneously when we're using the PS alley is at the same time, the ERL, that emergency response location, is being identified with an ELIN, and it's coming out of the files, and they're saying this ERL. So this is the way I visualize it, right? So as soon as the 911 call is placed, it goes into its own filing system, that's maintained by the owner of the system. It says this phone number is associated with this ELIN. So we're going to send and attached to this ELIN is this specific location, Tracy's office. So we have to go ahead and get that on over to the ALI database at the same time as the call's going through the system. Because when that ANI query gets to that database, I want to make sure that that exact location within the location gets sent to the PSAP. Does that make sense? Somebody tell me it makes sense. Because I know that it seems like a lot, but I've gone over this 100 times, so I get it. I just want to make sure that it's making sense for you guys. So, any feedback in the chat would be great. So basically, the ERL is the location within the location, but the only way to get it to the ALI to the ALI database to come back at the same time of the call is if it is sent over, and it's almost like the EILN is a magic key that allows it to get in to that database. Stephanie, I like the location with the location reference. It helps me. Yeah, it's the location with the location. So is the ELIN similar to a phone number's extension? Yeah, you could think of the ELIN as like, so a phone extension is telling you where the phone is per se, right? What's the Bluetooth ALI database meet? Yes, yeah. Sorry about that. I should have identified that. The Bluetooth that's above the ALI, that is the ALI database. Does the 911 center make a second query to the ERL? The 911 center is not querying the ERL. The ERL is just actually the location within the location. It's the name of the location with the location that is attached to the ELIN. So hopefully that makes sense. But it will make a query. This is all happening like all right at the same time. So when the 911 call gets placed and the call's going to the tandem, this system is automatically pulling the ERL location. So it's pulling the location from the phone number, matching it up with the ELIN, and the ELIN is that magic key number, which is going to come up again later, a magic key number. It's going to be called something else when it gets to wireless. So I'm going to compare them, but it's like a magic key that's going to allow this ERL to get into the ALI database, to be waiting there for when the ANI comes in and says, hey, where's the location? Which location is attached to this phone number right here? All right, the ELN must be a DID, so it'll enable ALI to work. But no, the ELIN is not a DID. The ELIN is not a phone number that you would know. You wouldn't see the ELIN. That's the magic key that's happening behind the scenes. It's not actually a phone number. It's kind of like you could you could equate it to like a PANI number, which is just like a fake number that just gets created, that is like a fake key or like a key that allows, it's like a passcode to say, hey, I belong coming into this ALI database. And then I'm just going to drop off this ERL. Hopefully that makes sense. So the ELIN is the magic number. It's the magic passcode that's going to open the door, that's going to allow that location to jump in that little ALI database and wait for the query for that information to come back. And I'm just looking at the questions. Great questions. And I hope that all makes sense. And then we have our host MLTSs with remote MLTS. That host MLTS with remote. These are where our biggest nightmares are. Okay. This is when we have multi-regional corporations that are using PS ALI. The processor at the main MLTS sends the direct inward dialed number and the caller's location to the database management system, but it's not actually sending the location that's attached to where the caller is. It's supposed to, but it doesn't always do that. And that is where we are having our biggest issues, because if you think about it, going back in the day when we had non-computer and I don't want to say non-computer because they were all kind of data-driven networks, but when they weren't internet protocol type things, we didn't see as many of the problems as we're seeing now. Now that we have internet-based, it seems like we have a lot more issues, and I'm going to kind of break down why we're having some of these issues. Okay. And then we have over-the-top data delivery. With 80+% of our calls coming from cellular devices, most being smartphones, there is a need for additional data to be sent. Additional data repositories were needed to assist with accuracy of these calls. So the NINA ADR architecture was created. An ADR, additional data repository, the architecture basically said, these are the standards that we think should be in place for any type of additional data repository that is going to hold on to data in the situation of a 911 call. MLTS data can also be sent to the additional data repository to assist with additional location and other identifiable information. One of the things that I was super proud about being at Rapid SOS was we were able to stand up the first additional data repository that was able to send additional data into 911, but it was via an over-the-top data delivery. In the beginning, a lot of folks balked at the fact that it needed to be an over-the-top solution. Everybody wanted it right into the 911 phone system, as did I. Believe me, if the more we talked about it, the more I realized it was virtually impossible to get the additional data that was possible. The possibility of getting additional data into the 911 center was endless. But to get it all in one spot was impossible. And so Jason, so Rapid SOS's portal would be an example of over-the-top data delivery system. Yes, absolutely 100%. And what it's proving to be is one of those central locations where whenever somebody would contact a 911 center and say, hey, we have data we want to deliver to your 911 center, the mindset should be go talk to Rapid SOS, send it to them, and then we will get it from them. Why? Because if we have one place that we can get all the additional data from versus 15, that makes sense. But everybody wanted it in the call handling solution. But that's not really practical or possible because we have hundreds of call handling solutions. We have hundreds of, between the CADs and the mapping and all of that. While yes, some of them bought into it, some of them integrated into it, There is no one solution that can receive all of the additional data that the portal can receive. So the way that I looked at it is if anyone said, "Oh, we can deliver data to 911." Great. How are you going to do that? Well, you just open up this web browser. Absolutely not. Go to Rapid SOS, give it to Rapid SOS, and then we'll get it through Rapid SOS. One logon, one place, everything coming in the same place. So that is the most reasonable solution to having it in one place versus 10 different places, right? Not another login, not a password. And I'll tell you, I did get a lot of, like I said, I get a lot of folks, "Oh, we had another login, another password." But if you're using the Rapid SOS portal, that's a login and a password that it's not bad to have to sign into. That one extra login and password saves you so much time and effort and aggravation and stress. Having to use 6 other things, well, then yeah, exactly. Tanya, great. I'm so glad that you're using it. And the other thing, I mean, I would get on a Rapid SOS soapbox just because I believe in the technology. I don't think folks are using it to the best of its ability, but you should be logged in at the beginning of every shift, because when the squid hits the sand, if you weren't logged in when you needed that information right there, you might not be able to get it at the call. So just be logged in. Defend why you were versus why you weren't. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But the additional data delivery is described just here. And yes, Jason, the portal is a prime example of over-the-top data delivery for sure. And we've had a whole bunch come after that are delivering additional data, and it's great. Every one of them. So folks will say, "Well, so and so does this, or so and such does this. It's the same. Rapid SOS does this, and which one should I have?" The way that I look at it is, if you can have them all, they all do something different, and they all do something better, and they all come up short in some place. So with that, if it's a free technology, it's a no-brainer. If it's an over-the-top solution that you can implement, that can be a tool in the toolbox, implement it. Why not? Having an extra tool in the toolbox is extremely beneficial. If this doesn't work, you use this. If this doesn't work, I don't want to get to that place in a call where I ran out of tools. That's just me. So we're going to jump into additional legislation special legislation, not the whole section on special legislation, one area of special legislation. And I'm pulling it out from the list because it belongs here with the multi-line telephone system legislation. So that's why we're going to do that here. And that's Kari's Law and BAUM'S Act. There's a lot of folks that have heard of these, but they don't understand how the 911 or how it affects us in 911, or what you can do as a 911 telecommunicator to make sure that these things are being adhered to or followed. In some places, there isn't a lot that you can do, but there's a very specific place that you can. So let's find out what it's all about. Back in 2015-ish, I was in dispatch. My dispatcher received a call from New Bedford, and it was for a fire at the zero waste facility in our jurisdiction. This facility did not have an occupancy permit yet. We didn't even have their address built into our CAD. They shouldn't have been there functioning, but they were, and they ended up having a fire. It was a garbage plant. And so when the girl that worked there in the office picked up the phone at her desk in one of the little shacks there, She picked up the phone and she called 911. It went to New Bedford, which is about 20 minutes away. New Bedford transferred the call to us, said you had a fire at the zero waste facility. We talked to the girl, dispatched the fire department. They got there, put the fire out, and I asked the lieutenant at the time to find the girl in the scale house and that called in the 911 call and have her call me on the business line. When she called me on the business line, I said, I just want to clarify that you called from the facility, from the phone on the property. She said, yes. I said, well, the call went to New Bedford and we need to get that resolved. Those calls should not be going to New Bedford. So she said, our host facility, our main facility is in New Bedford. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to fill out a discrepancy report. Can I have the number to your manager over there? So I made a phone call to the manager and I said, I'm filling out a discrepancy report. Please get with your phone provider and make sure that any of the phone numbers on your phone system for that facility are identified with the address in Rochester. So if they should ever have to call 911 again, that call is going to come to us and there is no delay in getting help to that facility. Well, 6 months later, the call you see on the bottom of the screen came in from the same facility. A man fell from a very significant height, and he was impaled by a metal rebar post. Got med flighted. They had to actually cut the pole. He left on the helicopter with the pole impaled. The call went to New Bedford. It came through New Bedford again. And so at the time, I was like, what recourse do I have? We told this guy to change. We told them to change it. They haven't changed it. Like, are there any laws that say he has to have the call going to the right place? This was my first experience with learning about Kari's Law. Kari's Law wasn't even a law yet. The incident had just taken place not that long ago, and her dad was on a mission. Oh, my slides are out of order. So this is Kari Hunt. On December 1st, 2013, Kari went to a hotel room in Marshall, Texas. Her father, Hank, was with her daughter, Brianna, later in the day, and her daughter, Brianna, had told Hank, Kari's dad, that she tried to call 911 when Kari's husband had stabbed her repeatedly in the bathroom at the hotel. Unfortunately, Brianna could not call 911. She couldn't call 911 because the phone did not allow her to, because she had to dial a 9 to get an outside line. We didn't know that you couldn't dial 911 if you had to dial a 9 to get an outside line. That's what I was referring to earlier, is that there was an error of ignorance, not intention. So when Kari's dad had learned of this situation, he took it to change.org and he wanted to make a change. He wanted to make sure that these types of phone systems did not have to have a prefix to dial 911. What also took place in this situation was the front clerk at the hotel was on camera. Nothing's going on. He didn't do anything wrong. He was on the computer shopping on Amazon or some type of website. He didn't know that this was taking place. He had no way to know this was taking place. So the reason why we share this is so you understand the components of Kari's Law and why they are in place. The components of Kari's Law, according to the law and the manual for the E&P exam. And it's really hard for me to keep this training session just very specific to the E&P study manual, but I'm going to give you a link to a webinar that I did with Hank and Mark Fletcher that will go much deeper into the topic. I'm very passionate about this topic. And so unfortunately for the exam, I'm going to keep it to the components that you need to know for the exam. So the components of Kari's Law, the first is their motto is no 9 needed. Now, with that said, there are phone systems that you may have to dial an 8 or a 7 to get an outside line. Bottom line, direct access to 911. There should be no prefix. So if you go to a facility and you see on the phone, it says dial 911 for emergency services, that's a big no-no. And while as a 911 dispatcher, you're not going to know whether or not the person on the other side of the phone dialed 911, as a patron of a hotel or a facility, you sure can ask to speak to the manager and make sure they're well aware of Kari's Law and get that resolved. There are folks that have changed their system, but they just didn't change the plaque cards. If they didn't change the plaque cards, a sticker will do. And I've politely told many hotels that. The next component, because of what I shared on the previous slide, is there needs to be some type of on-site notification to a staff member, whether it's some type of alarm, an email notification, a light notification, but there has to be some type of indication that says that somebody from this facility has dialed 911 and this is the location where the 911 call came from. And in Kari's case, as mentioned, Brianna had tried to call 911 4 times. If this particular notification was in place, then the person at the front desk may have been notified that somebody was trying to call 911. And then the last component is direct routing. There cannot be an interception of that 911 call being delivered to the most appropriate 911 center. You would be surprised at the number of facilities that actually route their 911 calls to a call center first or to a phone service. And it happens. It blows my mind. They actually do it intentionally. There was a place, I don't know exactly where it was. I want to say it was in Ohio, but I can't be for certain, that they were having an issue with their residents dialing 911 accidentally because they had to dial a 9. When they dialed the 9 to get an outside line and then had to dial like another number, they were accidentally dialing 911. And so like if they dialed the 9 and then dialed a 1 for a long distance number, forget they dialed the 1, dial another 1, and that's what's going to happen in a call that I'm going to show you in just a second. It happens. They were having residents accidentally call 911, and the PSAP had said something has to give. You guys have to figure out like how to resolve this. This is before Kari's Law, which says you know, no 9 needed. But instead of resolving the issue, they started routing any call that went to 911 to the service provider of the phone. The service provider of the phone would determine whether or not they had an emergency and then would transfer it to 911. Absolutely not. The place where you as a 911 telecommunicator can make sure that Kari's Law is being enforced is here. This is the one place where you can 100% make a difference with Kari's Law and potentially save a life. And that's if a call is misrouted to you, or if you receive a 911 call from any other location, you need to fill out a discrepancy report. Because if it's a multi-line phone system and that call goes to another location that should have went to you or came to you and should have went somewhere else, that is violating Kari's Law. But the problem with violating Kari's law is it has to be a certain phone system, and we'll get into that. On February 16th, 2028, on the 50th anniversary of the first 911 call that was placed in Haleyville, Alabama, President Trump signed into law Kari's law. The beautiful little girl to his right with glasses is Brianna. The gentleman here looking on very intently, that's her dad, Hank, and her stepmom, DJ. And unfortunately, Mark Fletcher is cut off over here, smiling, knowing the copious amount of work that went in to getting Kari's law into place. It was signed into law. So these dates are in the book and could potentially be on your exam. The compliance date of Kari's law, while signed in by President Trump, February 16th, 2018, the compliance date is February 2020, February 16th, 2020. February 17th, 2020 is the date that all new or 50% or higher upgraded phone systems have to be Kari's law compliant. So as I said before, you won't know if a phone system is supposed to be Kari's law compliant, but what you can do is you can use Kari's law for leverage if you have someone in your jurisdiction that is not following the rules and they're not getting their phone system fixed and they're not listening to what you're saying about getting their misroutes resolved. 3 weeks after Kari's law was signed by President Trump, he also signed BAUM'S Act of 2018. Apparently, I stuttered here. Need to take out that second signed. So 3 weeks after Kari's law was signed, President Trump also signed BAUM'S Act. So what is BAUM'S Act? While BAUM'S name is the name of a person who had played a very significant role in many legislative things in 911, they use his name as an acronym. I don't think you're going to need to know the pieces of the acronym, and I'm not even sure what they mean, but this is what it stands for. Repack airwaves yielding better access for users of modem services. That means, to me, organizing location for internet calls. That's what that means to me. But BAUM'S Act emphasizes the importance of making dispatchable location information from all 911 calls available to PSAPs. Dispatchable location being the key means location delivered to the PSAP with a 911 call that consists of a validated street address of the calling party plus additional information such as suite, apartment, or similar information. And what is a dispatchable location by definition? It is the street address of the calling party and additional information. Additional information being defined as the room number, the floor number, or similar information necessary to adequately identify the calling party's location. If you know what I know, we're not getting this location yet. There is absolutely no way to police this information. And while it is there, it's not fully enforceable at this time. The important dates to remember for BAUM'S Act is January 6, 2021 for wireline calls and January 6th for 2022 for wireless. These are the dates that these things need to be implemented. I know we're not seeing them. I can't explain. I can't tell you what we need to do. Mark Fletcher talks about it a little bit more in the webinar that I'm going to point you to in just a minute. A few other items. that you should know about is before Kari's law, less than 50% of the states had any type of MLTS legislation. Massachusetts did have an MLTS legislation, and that's kind of how I got pointed towards Kari's law as I was trying to look for something. Massachusetts did have some laws. Our MLTS law does go a little bit further than Kari's law. I'm pretty impressed with it. And we also have an MLTS program in place that if you were to Google Massachusetts MLTS program, or ML 911 MLTS program, you'll see that our state 911 is pretty on top of it, and they make it public when folks are not adhering. So if you report that a company, so that ABC disposal that I had reported a few times, if they had not fixed that problem, they would have been put on a list publicly saying that they're not following the rules and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I don't think that's going to look very well if something bad happens there and there's any type of litigation that takes place. So, Derek, yeah, they, I'll go ahead and call it the MLTS naughty list. Massachusetts State 911 doesn't call it that, but I'll go ahead and call it that. But it's a great model, and I think it should be adopted by many. And then on August 1st, 2019, the FCC unanimously voted to consolidate Kari's law and recommendations that dispatchable location be provided by all types of MLTS, including VoIP and cloud-based systems. And Derek, that's a shame that they don't see the value in that. And if you want to chat offline, I would love to. But I don't know why they wouldn't want to do that. This is people's lives, right? Like, if it's a simple fix, most of the time it's a simple fix. Most of the time it's somebody going into a phone system and typing in an address. Like, that's literally what it takes to change these addresses. But it takes that telecommunicator to fill out the discrepancy. It takes the person who's responsible for the discrepancy to get it to the right people, to make sure that the companies are notified to make those changes. It's important, and it gets overlooked way too much. The oh, it looks like I'm going to have to fix that link right there. I'll fix that before it heads out to you guys, but the manual lists this website and these two documents as for more information. So I recommend at least clicking on the link when you get this and reading through and taking a look at these for information on both Kari's law and BAUM'S Act as far as the manual goes, because some of their questions comes from these additional documents. If your state is interested in implementing legislation, this is another page that is listed for model 911 legislation. And then here is the webinar that I was talking about. If you go over to onscenefirst.com/training/webinars, scroll down to the bottom of the screen and click on this icon right here. It was a great webinar that I did with Kari's dad, Hank, and Mark Fletcher, who played a very significant role in getting Kari's law through the FCC legislative piece of it. And Kari's dad, obviously, is a man that I should have never, ever had to meet in my life. I thank God every day that I did. He's such an important part in my life, but definitely should not have had to meet him. But we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot from this tragedy, especially when it comes to MLTS systems. So with that, I will give them a shameless plug. If you have not got yourself a Kari's Hugs blanket, Kari's Hugs is a subset of the Kari Hunt Foundation. These blankets are undeniably warm and cuddly and cozy. And it was one of Kari's daughters that designed that logo there. They said there was nothing like Kari's Hugs, and these blankets, the proceeds of the blankets go to making blankets and providing them to domestic violence victims in public safety situations when they should need them. Maybe they're at a police department, they had to leave in a hurry, etc. So that is all I have for you today on MLTS. If you should have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. There's my email address. There's the quick contact form. In the lower right-hand corner is a private mental health and wellness Facebook group. We share a lot of valuable information there, lots of great conversations. So check it out. And until next time, heroes, stay safe, stay strong, stay here. We need you.